everyone. Mark Daniel Nelson here with Make Mine Music, sitting in my very chilly control room in Los Angeles, California, where it is unreasonably chilly for this time of year. Just got back from spending time with my family in Chicago over Christmas, and it was ridiculously chilly. I've got my flannel on, I got my mountain man beard growing, I got my Brian Carr music, cup of coffee. I'm just sitting back thinking about what I can do today for a video. A little bit before Thanksgiving, Warren and I discussed about tag teaming a project together where he tracked it and I mixed it. So he had Michael Humphreys, who is a phenomenal guitarist, come in with Jesus Acosta on keys, Joe Cleveland on bass, and Paige Cooper on drums. And they did a little live fusion-y, jazzy kind of performance in the studio there, which I believe by the time this video gets out, will be out. What I'm going to do today is do a mix breakdown of the track I actually mixed for them. Now, Michael's project name for this is called Future Self. So if you guys want to go check it out, go hear some of the stuff they're doing, because it's really, really cool. Very, very talented band, and just a lot of fun. I already mixed this song. I just want to do a nice breakdown to show you what I did. I mixed it hybrid, so half of it's in the box, half of it's out of the box. I can talk to you a little bit about what I'm doing with my processing here and there. But in general, let's just see what we can do and how much trouble we can get into just playing back what I had at the time of the mix. This might be a mix competition in the future, so keep an eye on the Future Self when the name pops up. Maybe there is a way to share the stems and let everyone else get involved on it. I think that'd be a lot of fun. But for today, I'm just going to crack open the mix that they ended up releasing for this song, which I believe is called Fall in Love. First thing I want to go over today, above everything else, was my vision for this. This is a drums, guitar, bass, keyboard band. It's tracked in a small room, very, very kind of off-the-cuff live feeling. Very, very, very tight band. And I'm thinking in my head and talking with Warren about his vision of what he heard. We wanted a really tight, focused drum sound and a really fat bass. And for me, I like really wide stuff. So if it's a guitarist and a keyboardist, I like to put them almost in their own speakers and have the rhythm section in the center. There's no vocals on this, and there's a handful of solos. There's some Rhodes, and there's some synth solo stuff. When listening, I'm thinking, okay, this song would do really cool hybrid because of some of the distortion artifacts that some of these pieces of outboard gear do very, very well. To get into it more, I'm using, for summing, my SSL Sigma and a new addition over the last 4 or 5 months, which is this insanely incredible rare API sidecar. Now, this guy I got from a wonderful friend in Texas who thought of me when he was looking at upgrading a console. This is the original first 8 buckets of the Rumors and Songs of Key of Life and many, many other classic albums that were done at Sausalito Record Plant Studio B. One of the cool things about this guy is that it has a lot of character, but at the same time, very open sounding. So if anyone knows the Rumors album, they know that it's incredibly open sounding and very lush and beautiful. And it sounds like $1 billion. So I'm sending my drums, my bass, and my guitars through the API. And I'm sending other elements of my template through the solid state Logic Sigma. And then that goes into its own channel. On the EQs, on the 550s, I had the same setting I had on the 5500, which is 50 hertz and 10K, just one click. That gives me a little lift and a little bottom on everything, and it creates a nice little circuit sound. There's a lot of holographic depth. I know I use that word a lot, but it does add that image. And I will show you, I have this set up where I can go in and out of the box. So all the little tinker toys I have is going to be inserted, and I can pull in and out the difference between here's the out of the box mix, here's the in the box mix. On the 2-bus, the overall compressor on that, I do have the Solid State Logic 2-bus Plus. I felt like over some of my other compressors for this song, it seemed to be nice and fast and tight. The Fairchild AT101 felt a little too colored and a little too, I don't want to use the word chocolatey, but it definitely made the drums and the bass kind of just sound a little too thick. And there's a lot of movement going on in this song, and the bass has insane amount of low end. In fact, I had to do a lot of damage control on that. I wanted to keep as much as I could because I felt like some of that sub stuff was creating a lot of beautiful energy and just beautiful, beautiful part to the track. But I wanted to keep things very tucked and tight. On my drum bus, I have the Audioscape Decomp, which I've been using for a while now on drums. Just flicking it. I will go in and out and show you the difference. And then Bricasti Reverb I have on the Stone chamber, not on the Sunset Sound chamber. The reason why I used the Stone chamber is because it's a little brighter, has a little more sharpness, and I felt putting it with the keyboards and the guitars just kind of married everything really nicely. Even though they're playing in a small room, it just kind of made things sound fat and tight, with just an extra sparkle there. I did use some of the plug-in reverbs for the spring reverb on the guitar, the AKG spring, which is phenomenal. And that's pretty much it. That leads me down to the very last step, which is my P331 by Whitestone. And that is essentially a tube Line amplifier. For me, I feel like these little colors, and I know Warren has said this in the past, that like my mixing is maybe slightly like mastering. I'm making really small moves and adjustments. So I'm looking for like boxes that add a little character and color to develop a different kind of thrust inside the final mix, like pulling out kick drums or snares or adding a little bit of fur or anything like that. The Whitestone has been ridiculous. So if you don't know anything about it, go check it out. I don't want to do too much plugging because this is not what this episode's about. It's more about what the gear I do use. And I will show you why it's special, because the coolest part about this box is it does auto gain in the analog realm, which means that I'm making little tiny adjustments and I toggle in and out. I don't have to keep adjusting the output. So combining all that together, I get the song that we have. I'm going to play a quick second of it and then we will dissect. That low end right there itself is just fat and needs to be in. I don't like just whacking stuff like that out. Doing a little bit of panning moves here and there on the guitar, tucking it in on the leads just a little bit, and then folding it back to the left hard. It's a Nord piano, but it has whatever the setting is. It's, you know, Rhodes with some spatial effects to it. Let's dig into it a bit. I'm going to take it from the top where the drums start, and I'm just going to solo the drums and talk about what I did to create the sound we have here. As you see, I'm using two styles of triggers for this, kick and snare. And the main reason for that is not because it wasn't recorded well, because it was because I wanted a little bit of fuzz and dirt on the kick, and I wanted a little bit of that 70s Mick Fleetwood kind of Fleetwood Mac snare sound on the snare. Warren's vision on this was very focused on making sure that we replicated some kind of 70s tone without going too overboard. So we're pulling in a little bit of the modern sound of today's drums and the yesteryear. So getting the punch and stuff and the distortion just right is crucial. Now jumping right in to the drums, if I take out the bus compressor, it's pretty But engaging again, it adds just this feel of polish, I guess is the right word. And the way I use it is I'm using the sidechain, so there's clean low end going into it because there's a really nice low end to the kick. The attack is pretty slow and the release is as fast as it can be. Again, very, very subtle, but keeps things tight and keep things in control. If I decide to take out the SSL bus compressor, changes things a little bit. Now going down the line, one thing to consider here, and you can see I have some rolls and stuff going, but in my snare track, I actually took out the close snare track. And there was a reason I did that. I felt personally on the parts where it was just jamming, not the fast stuff, that the drums had enough attack on the overheads by themselves, if I listened to it by itself. That room at Warren's is very, very tight sounding, and it just has this great snap, and I wanted to make sure that I kept that. So if I kept using other mics, except for the sample and that really great transient of the overheads. So I like to use the least amount of drums as I can to get the job done as easy as I can. Going down the line, if I solo out my room, it's really got a nice fur to it. Till they hit the cymbal. What for me I don't like about that is it always makes things sound bassy and kind of boxy in a smaller room. So I like to just take a little bit of that out, almost make it sound like the old salt shaker mic, and then use the actual limit on the MJUC, which sounds completely different than the compressor on the first MK1. It just sounds 60s to me. And I use that to tuck in. Also notice I've got these in-phase guys. Now there's a couple of different options out there on the market about kind of lining things up. And I don't usually like to do that too much, but I'll tell you why I did it here was because it was a small room and because there was other stuff going on, I just wanted to tighten up things just a little bit. If I take the whole set and I listen to it, and let's take out the room, you can instantly hear the snare is just hollow. It just puts things in a nice pocket. Very subtle again, but pocket is important. So there's your out on the overheads, and that is not 180 degrees out. These are slightly shifted, just enough. If you can see, 1.29 milliseconds off. Just brings that nice fatness focus right back into the snare. I go into the kick drum and see why I chose this sample. You can hear it's got some pretty lo-fi gnarliness to it. Now using the sample with this kit, it actually has a little more hip-hop vibe to it because those pickup kicks really help. Take it out. Just shows this picture a little more about kind of a little lo-fi, a little edgier, and definitely a little more dangerous. Going into the bass track and the drums together, because there's so much low end, I want to find ways to make sure he also has a lot of effects on his bass. Believe it or not, pulled up the old JJP. And what this allowed me to do, now backing it off pretty aggressively, it allowed me to get the presence I wanted out of the bass, a little more edge and attack, and adjust the low subs accordingly. And most people don't actually use this. They pass it by because they think it's one of those set and leave. But if you go into it, these presets are actually pretty great. And they actually really work really well, even if it's a really well recorded bass. I would say don't pass on some of these plugins out there if you have them, just because it's like a preset plugin or whatever. Because most of those plugins have some pretty cool tricks inside of them. Now let me take this out. Really does put it in its place. Now down the line with my bass, I do my standard, a little bit of a 1200 and then my compression on my tube tech. That's pretty standard stuff. If I go through my reverbs, I have my spring on my guitar that's on the right and the actual guitar is on the left. And then down to, let's say, the keyboards, which is going into my reverbs key, which is the Abbey Road plate. Let me solo that, and that's going keyboard right, reverb left, which kind of gives us this hug around the rhythm section. Before I get into any side of this outboard stuff, I want to go back into kind of why I decided to use the samples again. If I go into the reference, it's got a lot of vibe, it's very narrow sounding. Now this is the reference track. I don't think this is Warren's mix, but faders up besides itself. You want to decide, okay, I'm hearing a lot of snap in that snare. It's not that it's annoying, it's just distracting when it comes to the melodic stuff. So by using the overhead transient for the snare combined with the snare sample, before I show an example of the in the box versus the full analog that I have here, I want to show you a little bit more about this little bugger. This Whitestone is interesting because it allows me to input two types of transformers. It allows me to use slightly different types of lifting EQ. So I can go dual, which is low and high, low only, high only, and then out. These are all really good step digitally controlled, which I know in the future they are going to probably do a plugin that kind of controls the whole universe. I don't know when, I have no idea. But just knowing how this is all set up, it's obviously something cooking there. The way I hear it and see it and think about it is the full spectrum of an EQ. And on the tube line amps, depending on how you load the tube, it adjusts specific areas of the frequency response. So it can pull out synthesizers, it can pull up snares, push back snares, all sorts of stuff in the course of very, 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 very small moves. If I pull the whole track in without it, I think Greg Calby said it best, where it just kind of effortless. It just has this thing where I'm going to increase the loading just so we can hear what it's doing. Creating a nice little character sculptured sound that, combining everything, works really well together. Let's pull out the drum compressor again. It's a tucking mechanism that still adds a lot of that punch. Now for my final act here, I want to show you the difference between the way I have everything set now with my 2-bus, which it comes in on my Savitar converter, a little bit of EQ, just pulling down some of that watt around 340, and a tiny bit of air in MS mode on the sides, just to add a little bit of the cymbal spill. Again, a little bit more of that high frequency. My trusty 560 EQ that's doing nothing, even though I have a flipping vintage API. This thing still does something. And I love it. Thank you, Eric Boulanger, for that, because he was the guy that just pulled this out of thin air, I believe, and it just had this sound. I'm like, this is incredible. And my final guy is the Fab Filter. So all I really need to do, because of the way this is set up, I have mults on my outputs of the buses. I can just throttle in and out of the converter. And we can listen to, real quickly, what the in-the-box versus the out-of-box sounds like. In the box has this nice, flat, sharp kind of vibe to it. And the way that analog works and the way that summing works, at least for me and what I hunt for, is combining all these little elements for 3% or 2%. You might get a total collective of 10%, 15% with it in. Everyone's soloing, and it's crazy. The drums are, and the guitar's like, and the keyboard's like, it's just better to have space around things. So, the way I have it set up, with all these little parts playing and play together, I'm getting that holographic sound that I really like. The reverse of width, which is depth, and getting that depth out of the whole mix, and putting the drums maybe behind the snare versus it sharing the same wall space. A little bit of compression, a little bit of different types of flavoring and summing, and some EQ there. The 2-bus that has a very good personality, very fast, tight thing, a little bit of the tube amplifier with a little bit of push on the loading amplifier on the P331. Combined, sounds pretty great. It would be interesting to see, at some point, maybe we'll do another video where I don't use the outboard stuff, where I take what we have here in the box and try to get it with other elements. I believe that's it for today. For all you that are experiencing winter weather now, bundle up, turn on your speakers, let them heat your room, and happy mixing, and have a great week.